Hello, everyone. We'll get started in about 2 minutes. Thank you for joining us. All right, it's 9:30 by my computer, and I see everyone's coming in. Good morning. I am Marshall Lacco, the Section Chief of the Environmental Assistance Section within DEQ's Division of Environmental Assistance and Customer Service, within which the Environmental Stewardship Initiative sits. I want to welcome you to our 2021 ESI Conference. As I reviewed the registration list, it was great to see so many familiar ESI member names, as well as those contacts for our newest members. So welcome everyone. We are excited to have you join us this week. With businesses and organizations facing many challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and especially with the rise of the Delta variant, we made the decision to keep our conference virtual again this year. Hopefully our slate of speakers will help you to continue your environmental improvement journey. And if there are any other areas, topics you'd like us to highlight going forward, please share those in the surveys that we'll offer after each session. We're also contemplating when next year we're going to have the conference. Hopefully we'll turn the corner on this pandemic. Maybe we'll be able to see you all in person. I am very hopeful for that. We miss seeing everyone and meeting in person. So here's to 2022 and brighter things. Okay. Get my computer to cooperate. I'd like to thank all those who have agreed to speak over the next 4 days, including our DEQ and EPA staff, our ESI members, and staff from other state organizations. We also need to thank the Waste Reduction Partners and the Land of Sky Regional Council for hosting the event on GoToWebinar. They have been wonderful partners for us during the pandemic, allowing us to offer virtual learning opportunities. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't thank my team, without which this conference would not happen. And that is especially Angela Barger and Don Burke. They have put a tremendous amount of work and effort into its planning and ensuring its smooth execution over the next few days. I'd also like to thank Lisa Shanklin and Ron Pridgeon, who are two of our ESI coaches, for helping gathering speakers, and they will be assisting us with moderator duties and Q&A over the next few days. Let's see. Just a few housekeeping issues before we get started. You can edit your control panel settings if you wish in GoToWebinar, especially if you accidentally hide a function or something else pops up on your computer. You can always get to that control box by clicking on the little blue flower that will appear down in your task menu. And if you accidentally hide the menu control, you can use the view option to hide and unhide that control panel using the red arrow at the top. If you have audio issues and are using the audio through your computer, you can switch the source of your speaker microphones using the audio menu. And that would be my first go-to for you if you're having audio issues. And if you can't work that out, sometimes just rebooting and reopening GoToWebinar fixes some things. But if you need to switch to getting the audio through your phone, you can do that through the menu. And it will pop up a phone number and a webinar code for you to use. Those are also in the emails that you received. So if for some reason you can't even see it in the control menu, it'll be in the emails. All right. Okay. To prevent feedback and unintended background noise, all of our attendees are muted. However, we definitely want you to ask questions. So we encourage you to submit those through the question box at any time during the webinar. Staff will share your questions and comments as applicable at the end of each presentation or panel. And to assure that those that want to catch a specific session can do that, if we happen to run early, we will break between speakers and start the next presentation at the time specified on the agenda. All right, so let's get started. Over the next 4 days, we will hear from our newest ESI steward, Ajinomoto, about their environmental journey and learn about the state's resiliency program. We have staff from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency discussing the Safer Choice program, and ESI members sharing information about their sustainable packaging initiatives and their participation in the Green Labs program. We have DEQ staff joining us to provide updates and insights on their regulatory programs, as well as the waste reduction partners presenting on the newly created toolkit for the sustainable purchasing initiatives. And you can learn how your organization may forego some taxes on real and personal property through our tax certification presentation. And we are also thrilled to have our new DEQ Secretary, Elizabeth Beiser, with us today to share her vision for the department. And during that time, we'll also recognize our ESI member accomplishments. It is now my pleasure to introduce Jamie Reagan, who's the Division of Environmental Assistance and Customer Services Division Director. Jamie started as a natural resource conservationist in Wilson County before starting her DEQ career in 2003. Jamie holds a master's degree in environmental health from East Carolina University and has almost 25 years of experience providing pollution prevention and technical assistance. Jamie, take it away.
Thank you, Marcia. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Division of Environmental Assistance and Customer Service, I'd like to welcome all of our ESI members, potential/future members, I hope, our DEQ staff, and everyone else that's joining us today. So as Marcia mentioned, it really has been a challenging couple of years, but it's been great to find all these opportunities, such as having this conference virtually, that has allowed us to continue to meet with you and serve you. While we miss being able to interact fully in person, we hope that the webinars and other online assistance have been very beneficial to you. And we're super excited about soon getting back out and having these events in person and being able to come back on site. And we just appreciate your patience and working with us as we've gotten through this, and we look forward again to being in person. So now Angela Barger and Don Burke, our ESI program staff, will tell you more about our division as well as the Environmental Stewardship Initiative program.
Thanks, Jamie. I think Don's getting his presentation launched. Okay, Dawn, you're still, there you go.
There we go. Wrestling with that muted button. Can you see the presentation fine?
Yes.
Wonderful. And hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us for the 2021 ESI Conference. Great to have you back. And here's to a great week. So Angela Barge and I are going to start off with an overview of DEECs and ESI. So let's get the ball rolling. Now, before I advance the slides, let me give you just a little insight to DEECs. The North Carolina Division of Environmental Assistance and Customer Service, which is known to many as DEECs, offers assistance to local and state agencies, businesses, and residents throughout North Carolina for a wide range of environmental issues. The DEEC's mission is to protect and improve North Carolina's environment and economy through providing customer-focused assistance, facilitating a greater understanding of environmental permitting and compliance, encouraging wider adoption of sustainable practices, and promoting increased recycling and reduced waste disposal, and reducing impacts from resource consumption. Now here you'll see a basic hierarchy or organizational chart for Ncdeq programs. On your left, you'll see regulatory agencies. On the right, where we're located, is non-regulatory division of North Carolina DEQ. Secretary Elizabeth Beiser leads, Chief Deputy Secretary John Nicholson, and DEEC's Division Director Jamie Reagan, who you've just heard from. Also included are Section Chiefs Wendy Worley and Marcia Lacco, who is also my supervisor. Now, this non-regulatory program provides technical assistance for a broad range of topics and environmental media, which we'll take a closer look at. Now, DEECs helps its customers navigate regulatory and permitting challenges, become more environmentally efficient and make the most of available resources, achieve and be recognized for environmental excellence, and also contributes to economic growth. Now, to expand on these goals, our goal is to expand the use of sustainable practices regarding waste reduction, energy efficiency, water conservation, and emissions reductions. Okay? To broaden our understanding of the environmental regulatory and permitting programs to improve our customer service assistance and to promote recycling material management programs and help expand recycling infrastructures, thereby creating economic growth. Now here you'll see a list of programs embedded in DEECs. Our Environmental Stewardship Initiative, which Angela will discuss here in a moment, recycling program and services, our waste reduction partners, our regional permitting and SEPA coordinators. And if you're not familiar with SEPA, that's our State Environmental Policy Act. Our Small Business Assistance Center, Green Travel Recognition, our DEQ toll-free hotline and regional office administration, and our permitting transformation project. Now, our services include, but are not limited to, recycling and waste reduction assistance, environmental technical and permit assistance specific to citizens, businesses, local governments, and various industry types. There's free on-site energy and water use audits, small business advocacy, recognition of commitments to continual improvement performance, facilitation of financing and tax credits for recycling businesses, the coordination of exchange markets for reusable materials, express permitting coordination, and development of sustainability plans and environmental management systems. Through these technical services, DEECs helps its customers navigate regulatory and permitting challenges, but to become more environmentally efficient and make the most of available resources. Okay? To achieve and be recognized for environmental excellence, to contribute to the economic growth of the state, and to understand how to address environmental problems. Now, DEEC staff provides assistance to facilities working towards achieving zero waste to landfill or solid waste reduction goals. The North Carolina Department of Environmental Equality's hotline staff assists with more than 6,000 callers each year through our toll-free hotline. Staff answer questions, explain programs and regulations, and they provide technical information, respond to complaints, or refer customers to the appropriate offices that can assist them. Our Small Business Assistance Program was mandated under Section 507 of the 1990 Clean Air Act Amendment. It provides technical assistance to small businesses, assist with compliance issues, and provide outreach to small businesses, including trade groups, assist with emission calculations, small, medium-sized enterprises on auto body and paint booth emissions, and to promote pollution prevention and accidental release prevention. Now, small business is defined as equal to or greater than 100 employees. And there's a small business ombudsman available to comment on state and federal rules. He works with small businesses to ensure correct interpretations of North Carolina DEQ regulations and help develop cost-effective compliance solutions. We have 5 environmental assistance coordinators that are located throughout the state, covering 7 regional offices. And I'll show you a graph of that here in a moment. Now, our coordinators assist with customized permit assistance and coordination, which include tailored permit list, timeline development, application tracking, and to coordinate our DEQ's SEPA, again, the State Environmental Policy Act. They coordinate express, pre-application, multi-agency scoping, and compliance assistance meetings. They assist with environmental questions on request for information. They act as a DEQ Prosperity Zone liaison, and they coordinate Department of Commerce compliance checks. The Permit Assistance Regional Environmental Assistant Coordinators use a proactive approach to work with existing and prospective businesses to identify permit requirements, arrange pre-application meetings, and bring all parties together to address environmental concerns and meet deadlines. This can be a streamlined process for clients, and at times it can appear to be a one-stop shop process. Now, our coordinators make use of a DEQ's permit toolbox. Okay, here's an example on the screen for an animal waste NPDES permit. What activities might require this permit? What's the purpose of the permit? What issues with this permit? How much will it cost? And what are the payment options for your permit application fees? There are considerations for development, permit application pitfalls, permit tips and time savers, a scoping meeting, what to expect and how to prepare for this. And there's an online form to request permitting assistance. Our coordinators hold multi-agency scoping meetings wherein all parties are in the same room. This saves project owner time, money, resources. They can learn how different agencies and permits interact. Agencies comment on best permit pathway, the requirements versus the recommendations. They can help identify the next project steps. And this often helps avoid costly missteps and surprises. This occurs in the planning phase when the project proposal is defined enough to provide conceptual plans, but the flexibility exists to incorporate recommendations. As I mentioned, our environmental assistant coordinators are spread throughout the state. In the Asheville region, Allison Davidson provides coverage. Paul Williams provides coverage for both the Mooresville Regional Office and the Winston-Salem Regional Office. David Lee provides coverage for both Raleigh Regional Office and the Fayetteville Regional Office. Lynn Hardison looks after the Washington Regional Office as well as the SEPA program. And in the Wilmington Regional Office is Cameron Weaver. Now, WRP, Waste Reduction Partners. It's a highly experienced staff of retired engineers and scientists. They provide consulting services to identify cost savings. Now, these services are confidential and are supported through government and utility-sponsored grants. Clients include businesses, manufacturers, and institutions across the entire state. There have been recent focuses on water, wastewater, and even the brewery sector. Again, WRP is a program that uses the expertise of numerous retired engineers, scientists, and volunteer professionals to help North Carolina's businesses, institutions, and government agencies reduce energy, conserve water, cut waste, and save money. You can see they track many of their other client outcomes. This includes on-site assessments across the state, total utility cost savings, energy reduced, greenhouse gas reductions, the solid waste that's reduced, water use conserved, and the technical assistance provided. Now, a recent follow-up survey finds that 87% of WRP energy efficiency recommendations are indeed being implemented by past clients. Our recycling and materials management. This is they manage the state's recycling grant programs. This includes financial assistance to recycling businesses and local governments. They coordinate outreach efforts to build public commitment to recycling and provide support to local recycling educational efforts. The Recycling and Materials Management section, also known as RAMS, helps expand and improve recycling programs and infrastructure in North Carolina. Waste reduction and recycling provide tremendous benefits to North Carolina's economy and environment by creating jobs and private investment, by providing critical material supply to manufacturers, by reducing dependence on landfills and conserving natural resources. The Recycling Business Assistance Center specialists provide assistance to startup, existing, or relocating recycling businesses. The Recycling Business Center works with recycling companies to assess needs and provide assistance. It is a team of analysts that supports North Carolina's municipalities and counties in operating cost-efficient, effective recycling programs while diverting valuable commodities from disposal. This includes a recycling market directory that's available as well. RAMS also promotes recycling and help expand recycling infrastructure. The recycling provides critical material supply to manufacturers and reduces the dependence on landfills. And it creates jobs and private investment. There are over 16,000 jobs in this sector in North Carolina. And North Carolina Green Travel. It's a partnership of the DEQ, the Center of Sustainability at East Carolina's Sustainable Energy and Environmental Engineering, Waste Reduction Partners, and Visit North Carolina. It assists North Carolina's tourism businesses to improve their brand through going green and recognizes their accomplishments in environmental stewardship. This includes energy conservation, water conservation, and waste reduction and recycling. Now, the North Carolina Green Travel Initiative promotes robust economic growth and environmental stewardship in the travel and hospitality sector through the recognition of businesses in North Carolina's travel industry. With more than 220 participating businesses, properties are awarded recognition based on their level of environmental stewardship. And now, to give an overview of the Environmental Stewardship Initiative, which is fast approaching its 20th anniversary in 2022, is the ESI manager and our guru, Angela Barger.
Thanks, Don.
And there you go. Whoops, I'm
Nope,
sorry, I didn't
you're
need to
sharing.
do that, did I? Let me take it back. I forgot.
That's okay. All right,
Okay.
there you go. Thanks, Don.
No problem.
Yeah, so the ESI started back in 2002 on Earth Day. So we'll be celebrating our 20th anniversary next year. So we'll have a party when we can all get back together. We're looking forward to it. So the ESI, for those of you who don't know, is a voluntary recognition program and assistance program. We're looking to help facilities to go above and beyond what permits require of them. So at our higher levels of the program, they agree to help mentor the folks at the lower level of the program. So in theory, a rising tide lifts all boats. And so everything that we do is about trying to network best sharing practices among our membership, and then to provide you additional information to help you to achieve your environmental goals. We have staff within our department that Don just talked about that help to serve as coaches for our members. And then, of course, Don and I manage the program. We're voluntary. We're at no cost because we are partially funded through an EPA pollution prevention grant. And then the other part of us is actually state appropriations money. So we're the best kept secret in state government. We're funded through your tax dollars. So please take advantage of our services and let us help you. All right, Don, next slide. Some of the benefits and services that we have, that technical assistance, we connect you with the waste reduction partners, and we do have some technology and folks that can come out and help internally as well. Like I said, we have lots of networking opportunities, and I'll talk more about those in a minute. Recognition, so we have 3 levels of our program, which I'll also discuss in a minute, but each one of those has a different level of recognition involved. Dawn creates an electronic newsletter every other month, so that's another way that we share some of those best practices and news and upcoming events with our membership. I already talked about our coaches that are assigned to each member of the program. We have no cost training, particularly on environmental management systems. So if you're interested in ISO 14001, we do training on that on an annual basis, and some of those things we offer multiple times throughout the year. Recently, we also had an overview training on ISO 50001 because a lot more folks are getting interested in that energy management piece. And then, of course, any other environmental topic that we try and find that information for you. And if we can't provide it on our own, we will find someone who can do a webinar for you or come out and assist you or give you a phone call or an email, and we try to make those connections. Just last week, we had our steward forum. So for the folks at the highest level in our program, once a year, they have the opportunity to sit down with the DEQ secretary and have an exchange of ideas between the secretary and them, or them to the secretary. So it's an open conversation. Don? Okay. And then we also have an ESI listserv. So if there's ever a question from folks, they can shoot it to one of us, and we can post it up to a listserv that goes out to all of our members. And so that's a way to kind of get a group think on what answer to that question might be. We also sometimes get like compliance questions that we'll shoot over to our regulatory side of the agency and get answers for them. And then we can share those answers out to the entire membership without actually, having the facility's name attached to it. So it allows everybody else to kind of see, oh, someone else had the same question. I hadn't thought about it, but it definitely applies to me. And so it gives you that information. And then we have members marketing by, we'll have slides in presentations that we do that show all of our members. We have you listed on our website, and we always are talking about the good things that you do through various means. So we try and promote you as much as possible. Okay, Dawn, next one. Some other things that our staff does, we talked about that environmental management system assistance. We can also come on site and help. We do functionally equivalent audits for several of our members who are not certified to the ISO 14001 system, but they want some oversight to their program, or they want to move up to the higher levels of our program. And so we help them by going out and helping them with audits. We can also help folks that are certified with internal auditing. If you just want an extra set of eyes to look at your system, then we can help with that. For folks that are putting a system in place and you just kind of want to see where you are instead of doing that whole functionally equivalent thing, we'll look at your gaps. So we can come out and say, okay, this is what you've already got in place and these are the things that you need to work on. So we have a tool to help us do gap analysis on the ISO 14001 standard. We, of course, like I mentioned with the listserv, we can help with compliance questions by reaching out to our regulatory side without providing your name. So that's kind of helpful for folks that are, they're wanting an answer to a question, they're not really sure who they need to talk to, that kind of thing. Again, you have access to mentoring by other ESI members, particularly our stewards who agree to do that. And, if it is something on the regulatory side or even from our recycling side or the waste reduction partners, then we can connect you with those folks to help with some answers. And of course, we have networking opportunities, many of those. So this conference is one. Typically, we do this in person, so you can actually talk to each other during the breaks and, share ideas and, of course, just learn from each other through presentations. And so we really hope to get this back into in-person next year, fingers crossed. We do benchmarking events at member facilities. This first year of the pandemic, we kind of let that one go for a bit because we wanted to really keep that on-site ability. But last year, as things stretched on, we decided to start doing these as webinars. And so we've had several this year. Sierra Nevada spoke on their sustainability. Coming up in November, we'll have one from Smithfield Foods on their water reductions. And so those are really interesting and a way for you to kind of benchmark against other folks and kind of get some ideas for things you can do at your facility. And then, of course, we have topic-based, facility-led kind of events on various topics. And those can fall within our benchmarking series, the environmental benchmarking series. So we call them EBSs. We have a hazardous materials roundtable. And Dawn, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And we've also done an energy webinar series. Both of those are typically quarterly, although they shared a few this past year because of the topic that they were covering. I already mentioned training. So when I was talking about the EMS training, we have a module series for folks that are either newly implementing an ISO 14001 system, or for folks that have new employees that you kind of need them to have a deep dive on understanding. It's a really good series for folks to take advantage of. And we this year have made that a fully virtual, at least for the year. It's always good to be in person. It encourages more conversation, but this particular series is virtual and it seems to be going well for those folks. So I think in the future, it will probably be hybrid where, anyone who wants to be live and in person can be here in our offices, and then those who can't travel for whatever reason can dial in. Well, like I said, we do training on internal auditing. So we can come out and actually do a training for you, for your employees. It's better if we can also invite other ESI members who might be nearby or just have a need at that particular time. But it's not necessary. But we always do that internal auditing class multiple times a year because of the interest in having it. And then, of course, we do this ISO 14001 overview. It's a 2-day overview when we do it in person. When we do it virtually, it's 4 days, 4 half days. And we have a recorded version of this on our website. So if you want to check that out, you can go and look at that anytime you're interested in it. And I'll show you where to do that after a while. We've done trainings on lean and green, and what that means is incorporating green waste into your lean functions that you already have. So for example, if you're doing value stream mapping and you're typically looking at, energy and time savings and things like that, we can also help you look at green wastes at the same time. So we can do a class on how you can do that. We do zero waste to landfill assistance, including some presentations. We've had a couple of zero waste to landfill conferences, and we just recently helped CRA with a track on zero waste to landfill. So we have some experience with that if you need assistance and that's one of your goals. And then, of course, developing smart environmental goals. We kind of have this as part of our module series, but we're happy to break this particular presentation out and give it if someone needs some assistance with goals. All right, Don, next. So now I'm going to talk about the 3 different levels of the program. If you don't happen to be part of us already, this is kind of the meat of it. So at the partner level, basically, these are folks that are just starting to put a systematic approach into place. The only bar here that they have to meet is that they're not under criminal environmental indictment or conviction. And we do a compliance check, but not everything has to be in a row at this point. Our partner level, it's all about assistance. We want to help you to achieve your environmental goals, and we can help you from whatever level you're already at. So like I said, the low bar is, that you're not under criminal indictment for environmental issues. And I mean, it's a really low bar. So, but you do have to commit to either implementing an environmental management system, which we will help you with. That can be your goal, or you need to set 2 long-term measurable performance goals. So that would be like reducing your energy, reducing your water by a certain percentage over a certain amount of time so that you can actually measure those numbers. And again, we can help you with those, through the waste reduction partners and other means. But this way you're actually working towards something, and we understand not everybody can put an EMS in place because of the time commitments that are required for that. So for the smaller folks, setting long-term measurable goals is a good option. And then finally, all of our members have to report annually on the progress towards their goals. We don't tell you what goals to set. We just want you to tell us your progress on the goals that you have set for yourself. So it really helps us, particularly with our grant, to have that data in order to show progress for our grant. But it also helps us to know what trends that our members are interested in. What are you working on so that we can help provide more content based on what your goals are. Next. All right, our middle layer is our rising steward level. And so they have to meet all of the requirements of the partner level, of course, but then they also have to demonstrate a mature environmental management system. It does not necessarily have to be certified. Remember, I mentioned we do these functionally equivalent audits. So if you don't want to have that third party cost, then we can come in and actually see that your system is functioning as an ISO system would. You just don't have that additional oversight from that third party. So you have that EMS in place. It's a mature system that's been functioning for at least a year, preferably longer, but at least a year if we're looking at an application at this level. You must set long-term measurable environmental performance goals. So, whereas the partner is either or, here you're talking about both. You have to have that mature EMS and the measurable goals. You demonstrate a commitment to go beyond compliance. So now compliance is your baseline and you're looking to move beyond that. And then of course, at our rising steward and our steward level, because it's a little bit more rigorous requirements, we come out and do a site assessment every 5 years to make sure you're still meeting the level of the program that you're at. All right, steward. Thanks. All right, so our steward level, these are the cream of the crop here. They have to meet all the requirements of both the partner and the rising steward levels, but they also have to set aggressive environmental performance goals. And when I say aggressive, it's aggressive to that facility. We have, smaller facilities, we have larger facilities, and really everybody is very different in the things that they can do, capital costs and all of that. So when we're talking about aggressive, we're talking about aggressive for that facility. Aggressive can also look small if you're just looking at the goal. A 2% reduction doesn't sound like a lot, but a 2% reduction when you've already had an 80% reduction is huge. So, we take all of that into account when we're looking at aggressiveness. They also have to commit to exemplary environmental performance. Again, compliance is the baseline here. So they are looking to go above and beyond as far as possible, being on that leading edge of performance. They have to integrate their environmental management system into their core business functions. So environment is not a second thought. It's always like at the forefront of everyone's mind, basically. They have to communicate with their local community, their program activities and progress towards their goals. Basically, they are an environmental champion in their community, and how they show that happens in many, many ways. We see folks, working with school systems, we see community events, we see, adopt a highway, adopt a stream kind of programs, working with local groups, providing wildlife habitats and other things that, all benefit their local community. And then once they're a steward, they do that agree to mentor others in the program. So, and again, they undergo that 5-year renewal. All right, Don. So if you're curious, this is kind of where we stand. So back in 2002, we started with 1 steward and 27 partners. And now in 2021, we're up to 30 stewards, 10 rising stewards, and 56 partners at 159 member sites. So what that means is, at the partner level, and at the partner level only, we allow folks to join as a multi-site. So let's say a corporation has multiple sites across the state, and they're going to join the program and start working on that EMS or set a goal, but they only want to have to report once for all of those sites. Then they can join at the partner level and just do that single report for all of those sites at once. Whereas when you start moving up into the rising steward and the steward level, it is site specific. So it's no longer allowed to be a multi-site. It has to be controlled by the same folks, as far as management goes. They're all managed together. You have to have a single environmental management system that is controlled by the same management and all of that. So that just requires you to be a single site, unless you're on a campus that has like multiple buildings, for example, but it's still run by the same management team. All right, next. As I mentioned, we have these lovely splash screens that we use in these presentations to help market our members. So right now, this is our current membership. We're very proud to have all of these folks to be a part of us, and we're always excited to add more logos to the splash screen. So if you're interested in joining us, please let us know. We're happy to help with that. Next. So as far as our group goes, I talk about applying at the rising steward and the steward level. We have an external advisory board that helps us out to do that. It's a balanced group of folks. Its maximum number is 15 members, and we do give our stewards preference for membership on this board, and that helps us to keep the integrity of the program high. These members include manufacturers, industry trade groups. We try to have environmental and citizen NGOs on the committee, but sometimes they're a little bit harder to get because they have very limited staff to be able to staff our board as well. We have agribusiness, small business, local and state, federal government representatives, and then we have a DEQ representative on the that chairs the advisory board. But this group reviews those applications at the rising steward and the steward level, and they provide recommendations to the DEQ secretary regarding who should move up to those 2 levels. And then they also review program effectiveness and make suggestions to the program on improvements that we can make. All right, next. In addition to our advisory board, we also have an internal working group, and that consists of folks from our regulatory agencies as well as one of our DEQ staff. And basically what they're doing is they're looking at all of our membership applications for compliance. So they do those compliance checks for us when things come in, and that just helps us to know where you might need some additional assistance. They help to provide internal comments on any applicant performance. So if someone has an issue at some point along the way, they can kind of give us a little bit of background on what needs to be improved if it's a compliance issue. They review and recommend our partner level. So while the board is specifically looking at our rising steward and stewards, the internal work group approves our partners. They review program materials and provide guidance to the advisory board when we need it. They increase the visibility of ESI within the department here. And they provide regulatory updates to our staff and membership as appropriate. So, you know, if we know something's coming down the pike, we might reach out to our internal work group and say, can you give us a little bit more information so that we can share it on our listserv or in our e-news, that kind of thing. They also serve as a technical contact for us and for our advisory board in case there is a member that has a compliance issue that we need to discuss. And, you know, they can recommend incentives to the secretary, although so many of our things are regulated in a way that doesn't allow for a whole lot of flexibility. If something comes up, you know, we can reach out to them and say, you know, is this even possible? All right, moving on. So I mentioned earlier that everybody's required to give us an annual report, and I just recently got this data together. I haven't released our final report yet, but our data for the year of 2020 has been compiled, and so this is the reductions from our membership from calendar year 2020. And even with the pandemic, you know, we have a lot of reductions here that are tied to environmental goals. And you can see they saved $7 million. And it's interesting because our cost savings reporting here is actually an optional field for our members. We prefer that they give it to us, but we understand that that can be a proprietary number. And so really out of, you know, those 90 some odd reports that we get, only about 15 at the most report cost savings to us. So just imagine what this number truly is if everybody were able to report their cost savings to us. So that's a really nice feature. And this is specifically from environmental goals, not other tied things. And of course, you know, there's lots of reductions here in water use, you know, over 1 billion gallons again. Energy use is 8 million BTUs reductions, and then, you know, wastewater volume tends to follow the water reductions very closely. So lots of great numbers from our membership. All right, next. Like I mentioned, we just had our steward forum last week, and I kind of talked through what this actually is, but it offers our stewards the opportunity to share ideas and experiences with the DEQ secretary. And also we've recently started inviting our division directors as well, because many of the things that were brought up were specific to a regulatory agency. So they started coming in to be able to answer some of those questions immediately instead of us having to go back and forth with the folks that asked the question. All right, next. As I mentioned, we have an upcoming event in November. It's going to be Smithfield Foods, their Wilson plant, which is the bacon plant. So it's sad that we won't be able to go out there and taste their bacon, but they will be talking about their water reductions. And that's going to be on November 16th from 2 to 3 p.m. So next on. in order to find that and any of our other events that we have coming up, you can go to our website, ncesi.org. If you scroll down our page, you'll see this ESI events button, which will take you to a screen with 6 more buttons that kind of breaks our different events down. So you've got our conference, so that's where you're going to go and find the registration link if you need to send that off to somebody that would like to participate the rest of the week. But it's also going to be where we're going to be posting all of our presentations and the recordings over the next week. Then the next one there is our Hazardous Materials Roundtable, which Dawn's in charge of, where we have discussions about various hazardous waste and hazardous material topics. And then we have our Energy Management Series. So that's all of our energy topics. All of the recordings from the past year are under these blocks. So feel free to go and catch up. If there's something that strikes your curiosity, feel free to play those. If there's something that you'd like to see in any of these, please let us know. We're happy to look at those options and see who we can come up with or what kind of topics we can do. We're hoping next year to do a whole series on GHG reductions and reporting. So look for that in the coming year. And then on the next level down, you've got your environmental management system training. So that's where the ISO 14001 overview recording is. So you can go in there and find that. And then our networking event. So the EBS. So this is where you would find the registration link for that Smithfield presentation that's going to come up in November. And then that last block is just for other things. So right now what's residing in there is a recording that we did on how to move up within our program. So if you're at the partner level or the rising steward level and you're looking to move up to the rising steward or the steward level, then you can go in there and kind of listen to that recording and see if you have any questions from that. All right, Dawn, next. So this is our contact information. Feel free to reach out to us anytime. We'll be a little slow to respond to you this week just because we're doing the conference. But just so you know, we're all still working from home some of the time. We're in the office some of the time. So the fastest way to get hold of us is to shoot us an email. And if you want us to call you, just let us know a good time and we can set that up either as a phone call or through a Teams meeting or something like that. So did anybody have any questions before we let you go and move on to our next?
All right, so we didn't have any questions, and I also noticed that we started your session before the allotted time, so I apologize to anyone that's unfamiliar with our division or ESI and that we started before we said we were going to. We will adjust that. But no questions, Angela. But I did see we've got quite a few of our members in the session still. So remember at the beginning I was talking about, we're thinking about when to hold our conference. So if you go to the attendee part of the control panel, next to your name, you'll see a little hand. So if those who are on would hold up their hand, we're thinking about whether we keep the conference in the spring or we move it to the fall. We've had it virtually in the fall the last 2 years. So those who are interested in keeping it in the spring, if you'll raise your hand, and this is not meaning that we're going to change it based on your answers, just to get a feel for what people are thinking. And if you'll keep them up, I will do a little hand count. Oh, I saw one disappear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see, hold on. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And if those folks will take their hands down, you can just touch the hand. Ah, perfect. You guys know how to use it. Okay. So if you're interested in having the conference stay in the fall, if you raise your hands now. Let me scroll down. Okay, so we were 1 or 2 more, I think, for the fall, but it's kind of evenly split. So we'll take that into consideration. If there's something specific in your program that makes you answer one way or the other, if you would put that into the chat box or the question box, just so we're aware and we have that information in the back of our head when we're doing our planning, that would be really helpful. Otherwise, and I'm sorry that I'm switching you're seeing the side of my head right now. I have multiple things on multiple screens. Okay, so I saw a comment that one of our members got lots of reporting in the earlier part of the year. So that's good to know. We do know that the Carolina STAR conference is usually in September. And I believe this year NCMA is holding their EEHS school, but that usually is in August. So I think the only thing that we are in competition with is that STAR conference, which if we were to move it to the fall, we would take that into consideration. Okay. Oh, okay, we got someone else chime in. Yep, same here. Lots of reporting in the spring. Okay. All right. So thank you everyone for letting us know that information. And we are about 5 minutes ahead of schedule. So we are going to pause and come back at 10:30 to hear from Dr. Amanda Martin with our resiliency. So we'll see you in about 5. Thank you, everyone. All right, we've got just a few minutes before we'll get started. All right, it is 10:29, so we got just about a minute. Hope everyone is enjoying their Monday, getting back into the swing of things. And I see Dr. Martin setting up her presentation. Perfect. I'm just waiting for my computer to let me know we are close enough to start.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
I can hear you, Dr. Martin.
Fantastic, thanks.
Okay. Finally, 10:30. All right, thank you, Dawn and Angela, for that overview of our division, the Division of Environmental Assistance and Customer Service within DEQ, and also that great history and background about ESI, if you're not familiar with it. Next on our agenda, we've got Dr. Amanda Martin with North Carolina's Resiliency Program. I think as everyone's aware, climate change impacts are affecting all of us, and North Carolina has been hit with quite a few tropical storms and hurricanes in the recent past, so that's something that's really important to everyone in the state. So Dr. Amanda Martin, who's going to speak about the Resiliency Program, is the Chief Resilience Officer for the state of North Carolina, and she is passionate about building resilience in ways that advance economic prosperity, strengthen housing options, and celebrate cultural and natural heritage. In her current work with the Office of Recurrency and Resiliency, she advances the state's resilience through policy advising, stakeholder engagement, and technical assistance. She completed her PhD in City and Regional Planning at UNC Chapel Hill, where her dissertation examined post-disaster home buyouts in North Carolina from the perspectives of resiliency, recovery, and racial justice. Amanda has over a decade of experience in climate resilience, disaster recovery, and community development, and she holds a master's in city planning from MIT and a bachelor's degree from Harvard. She lives with her wife and 2 children in Durham. So Dr. Martin, it looks like you're ready to go. Take it
Wonderful.
away.
Great, thank you for the introduction. My name is Amanda Martin. I'm the state's Chief Resilience Officer, and I'll be talking with you all this morning about climate change resilience in North Carolina. And I want to start out with a few kind of introductory comments. One is to explain the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency might not be an office that you are especially familiar with. We are
Dr. Martin, can I interrupt you for a minute? I can
Sure.
see your camera is probably on, but all I'm seeing is a dark screen. There we go.
Better? Okay,
Yep,
sorry about that. And can you all see my slide as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency is an office within the Department of Public Safety. We were created to be a sibling agency to North Carolina Emergency Management. We were created in 2018 after Hurricane Florence. And after Hurricane Florence came through, the state was still really grappling with the scale of recovery resources and the long-term recovery needed from Hurricane Matthew, which had been in 2016. And so knowing that there were going to be a lot more infusion, there's going to be additional infusion of resources and need on the ground, the state created a new office to handle the administration of funds for long-term recovery. And so that's what the majority of my colleagues do, and we call my office NCORE for short. That's the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency. But I lead a small team that's focused on long-term resilience and ensuring that the ways that we rebuild and build prepare the state for the impacts of climate change. So that's what I'll be talking about today. All right, so the first thing I'd like to invite all of you all to do is to think about a place in North Carolina that you really treasure. And it could be a landscape that you love, it could be the place where you live, or it might be a place that you like to visit, a place where some family members live, a place that speaks to your ancestry or your heritage. And hold that in mind today as we are talking about the impacts of climate change and how we become more resilient, because climate change is poised to impact every single corner of the state from many different angles. And it's important both to understand that impact from the perspective of a place of personal significance, so that it doesn't seem so abstract and so doomsday-ish that we sort of mentally push it off into a different corner of our mind. So we want to hold on to a place as we're talking about climate impacts to understand what are the projected impacts of climate change to that place, and then how do we build resilience in that place and ensure that generations to come are able to enjoy it. So, and I want to take a moment at the top of the presentation to acknowledge the devastating disaster that we had not in August, so not even 2 months ago, at Tropical Storm Fred. I'm not sure where the participants this morning are probably hailing from across the state, but Tropical Storm Fred was an extremely, it caused extremely powerful flash floods in Western North Carolina. And these images are just a reminder of the power of flash flooding in our climate changed environment. And if anybody on the call was personally impacted by Tropical Storm Fred, my heart goes out to you. Please know that the state is working hard, and local officials are working hard as well to prepare and work towards long-term recovery in those impacted areas. And if any of you all are professionally involved in the long-term recovery, thank you also for your service to the state and to that region. So in North Carolina, we are very fortunate to have fantastic science on climate change projections. This comes out of a 2020 North Carolina Climate Risk Assessment and Resilience Plan. This is a plan that was called for in Governor Cooper's Executive Order 80, which is the state's commitment to climate change, or commitment to address climate change. Called for the state to do this kind of statewide science report and then to develop a resilience plan. So a lot of the material I'll be talking about today comes from that document. And we're very lucky to have 50 scientists that participated in the development of the science report. I'm either developing the science or conducting peer review on the science. So I encourage any of you that would like to use some of these findings in your work, please go Google the, it's on the DEQ website, but also very Googleable, the North Carolina Climate Risk Assessment and Resilience Plan. So what does the science tell us about climate change in North Carolina? In North Carolina, it's virtually certain that sea level will continue to rise. And it is very likely that summer heat index values will increase. It is likely that annual total precipitation will increase. It's likely that hurricane intensity will increase. Those are often the kind of pictures we have in our minds about what climate change will look like. It's also likely that severe droughts will become more intense, and also likely that the increase in precipitation will lead to an increase in inland flooding. And so if I make that all hideously small and put it on one slide, it's important also to consider additional context of non-climate stressors that intersect with climate change. So everything from population growth and aging infrastructure to socioeconomic disparity, the pandemic that we're grappling with. Many of these stressors that aren't directly about climate change have very particular intersections with the climate change impacts that we are experiencing to create particular layouts and landscapes of impact in North Carolina. And so to talk about a little bit about some of those impacts, this is a few of the major impacts that we anticipate. Many more are outlined in that North Carolina Climate Risk Assessment and Resilience Plan, but I wanted to give a sense of the diversity of climate impacts that we should be considering. One is wildfire. This is another one that we don't think about as often. We think of it more in the western part of the country, but actually North Carolina has a number of areas that are prone to wildfire, and with those increasing heat values and increasing intensity of droughts, we're going to be at increased risk for wildfire. Wildfire, of course, being a risk to human life and property, but also being a major public health stressor with smoke. Saltwater intrusion, going the other direction. Saltwater intrusion is what happens when sea level rises. We see not just kind of the vertical increase of sea level, but also this lateral movement inland of salt water. And that can impact agricultural lands. It can also impact sources of drinking water. Flash and riverine flooding. We're unfortunately very familiar with this in North Carolina. This is the flash flooding, was what we saw with Tropical Storm Fred. And riverine flooding, something important to consider is that we have a lot of wide, flat river basins, especially in central and eastern North Carolina. And so the rain that happens upstream and sometimes the infrastructure, the development that we have upstream has really profound impacts for communities downstream. Cumulative public health burden of climate change. These are often cardiovascular or cardiorespiratory kinds of impacts that we're talking about, from high heat and air quality. Often we have indoor air quality problems after hurricanes with mold growth. And one more thing I wanted to add to that, and this will be familiar to any of you all who have been through a natural disaster, and probably all of us who have been through this pandemic in the past year and a half, is that there's a profound mental health impact of climate change. And this is something that's we probably under recognize and we don't totally know how to address. But it's important for us to keep raising it as we look at the health impacts of climate change to understand how a community heals when it's been through a collective trauma and needs to start to rebuild and rebound. Loss of housing stock, business and job loss. This often speaks to those physical impacts of climate change. We saw in New Hanover County, I think they lost 1,200 units of low and moderate income household or low and moderate income housing during Hurricane Florence. So that's just one county losing 1,200 units. We already have a scarcity of affordable housing in the state. And when climate change reduces and our changed climate and the storms and other impacts that it brings, when it reduces further that stock of affordable housing, we don't always have that natural private sector response to rebuild, particularly in that low and moderate income housing bracket. And finally, water quality and ecological impact. These are two linked impacts. The plant and animal species in our state, like across the globe, respond to very particular climate niches. And as those change, those species go or become stressed and they need to migrate or they need to cope somehow to survive. And what we're seeing is a degradation of ecosystems and habitats, and that can have a profound impact on water quality because often those habitats play a role in improving and addressing water quality issues. All right, so if all of that did not convince you that there's a lot at stake in North Carolina, I want to make a pitch to consider the generation to come. And this is not just about climate change will impact these kids' future. It will. It absolutely will. But frankly, climate change is here now. Our climate is changing. The particular point I want to highlight here is that the decisions we make today about how to adapt to climate change will also really shape the world that these children live in. So if we can invest, knowing what we know now, if we can invest in the resource or in the infrastructure and in the land use decisions that will protect our state from these impacts, if we invest in the systems that create resilience, that support public health, that support housing, these children will grow up in a world that is not as financially and physically constrained by climate change. So my generational pitch is that the decisions we make today about how to cope with climate change have really important ramifications for the long term, especially when you consider infrastructure. Once you lay down, very hard to pick it back up, very hard to change it. And fiscal impacts. We don't want to have to reinvest in something large that we paid for in the public sector, today. We don't want to have to pay for it again in 15 or 20 years if it was supposed to last 75 to 100 years. All right, so talking about resilience now, I like to use two models to talk about resilience, and they're two metaphors. They don't really go together. I'm sorry. If somebody is more clever and has two metaphors that go together, let me know after my talk. The first is the swinging door model. And this is a model that, imagine for a moment that we are in person at this conference and you're in a big conference hall, and you are, one of the best parts about being in person, of course, is that you get to connect with your colleagues and friends, and you're chit-chatting during a break, and you happen to be standing right outside the grand ballroom door where they're having the sessions, with your conference coffee in one hand, your conference pastry in the other, and the door swings open. And when the door swings open, it knocks into your coffee, and your coffee splashes out, and hopefully it doesn't get on you in your nice conference clothes. Hopefully it doesn't get on your colleague that you're speaking with. But the point is that after that happens, you collect your composure, and what do? You take a step to the side. You do not go standing right back where you were standing before, because now you know that you're right in the way of the swinging door. And that's what resilience is about. It's not just about collecting our composure and recovering quickly. Quick speed is part of it, but it's also about improving and learning based on past experiences. So often we hear talk about bouncing back after a disaster. And I encourage you all to think about bouncing forward after a disaster. So not just going back to that baseline, but figuring out where we want to be and how we get there. The second metaphor is the Swiss cheese model. This comes to us from the pandemic. Some of you may have heard about this. And the Swiss cheese predates COVID, but it is a pandemic model that puts forth that there are multiple layers of defense between a person that you see here on the, the left, and the virus on the right. There are multiple layers of defense, and no single layer is going to provide 100% protection against harm. But what we hope is that when we stack up, if each of those layers of defense is a slice of Swiss cheese, the more layers that we prop up, the fewer kind of through holes there are for the virus to get through to the person. So there is always this residual possibility of harm, and part of resilience is acknowledging that, but also putting up multiple layers of defense. So I'm going to talk about what some of those layers of Swiss cheese are for us in North Carolina. A big one is land use. I come from a land use planning background, and so I'm very passionate about land use, and I think that many of our resilience issues should and can be addressed at the land use planning development level. So this is really about how we learn to live with water. Traditionally, we've thought about, for flooding, keeping flood water out of town, or keeping it off of my property or away from the subdivision. And what we need to do is think about that and think about where the water is going to go. Okay, because it's no longer enough to think about keeping water off of my property, because what is happening is that water gets kept off my property and it goes right into somebody else's property. So we need to think about a place for development and a place for water. And that place for water is not 200 miles away in the ocean. It needs to be a little closer by for this model to actually provide us with that Swiss cheese layer of protection. The first do no harm piece is that while we are putting a lot of resources into protecting the existing development that we have in risky places and flood prone places, as it turns out, we're also still developing in those places. We are putting new development in the floodplain. And that seems like a very straightforward place that the state needs to really focus on. Why is that happening? And how can we turn that around? Because when we build in the floodplain, we're making a problem that we know we have worse. All right, infrastructure is an important layer of that defense, the important layer of the Swiss cheese. And there's a lot of different kinds of infrastructure. Some kinds of infrastructure protect us against flooding, and other kinds of infrastructure needs to be protected from flooding. So like our roads and our utilities. And what I like to say here is 2 points. One is that we need to understand that with our changing climate, especially, infrastructure may fail, and we need to be aware of the possibility of failure and think about what's going to happen and how will we cope. So if that's system redundancies, if it's other kinds of layers of protection, we need to not just bury our heads in the sand and say, you know, that levee will protect us, that floodgate will protect us, but also understand there's a small chance of failure and what's going to happen and how will we be ready for that. And the other thing is that infrastructure is very expensive, and I kind of already made this point, but when we're putting in new infrastructure now, we need to design it for the projected climate impacts over the anticipated lifetime of that infrastructure. So if we're building a bridge that's going to last, we want it to last 75 to 100 years. We need to look at the climate change projections for 75 to 100 years out and make sure that that bridge is designed to meet those specs. Nature-based solutions, another part of our layers of defense. Natural features provide significant protection. Here, the images suggest flood protection, and that is a really important piece, but also when we talk about heat, urban heat island effect, science suggests that cities can be up to 20 degrees hotter than areas around them. And street trees, tree canopy, impervious surface, those are all pieces of the puzzle for cooling our cities. Community capacity, this is everything from our local government and our down to our neighborhood cohesion, both a role for the public sector and a role for activity outside the public sector. And this all contributes to the social and economic connectedness that is kind of the phrase safety net is sort of fraught, but it's an important layer of how we support one another during times of stress. And so this is everything from business networks and chambers of commerce to faith communities and school networks and senior centers. And then finally, because I am a employee of the Department of Public Safety, I'm contractually obligated to talk to you about emergency preparedness, and a really important layer of defense, one we hope we don't have to use, but we do wind up using it, which is to be prepared both as households, as businesses, as organizations, and as communities for emergency. So understanding our flood risk, having methods of communication, thinking about how we will reach employees, how we will reach community members in times of disaster. All right, so what's happening in North Carolina? I wanted to give you a snippet of all of the work that's happening in North Carolina and invite you all to tell me and my office what you are doing, because there's no way we can capture all of the great work that's happening in the state with respect to resilience. So one thing we are doing is we're updating data. Part of this is just understanding that with our changing climate, we need updated data so that our models that try to describe today's risk have all of the climate events that have happened recently. So, for example, some of the models that we use to build infrastructure rely on rainfall data that is only current as of 2005. And so that does not include Hurricane Matthew, does not include Hurricane Florence, nor any of the other tropical storms or hurricanes that we've had. And so there's kind of just getting to today and modernizing to today, and our time intervals for updating that data need to become shorter. We're also doing some pilot work in the state to look at how our climate projections can be transformed into a projection of future rainfall statistics that could go into some of these models that we use to size infrastructure, for example. So not just getting the data up to today current, but thinking about how we can take those climate models and bring them down and use them in a way that makes sense to understand how we actually size infrastructure for our projected climate decades into the future, so that we're making those wise investments with taxpayer dollars. We are retrofitting to better standards. DOT is doing a ton of fantastic work in the resilience sphere. This is just one example. This is NC 12, State Route 12 between Swansboro and Cedar Point. They're working on an effort with support of the Coastal Federation, building large-scale living shoreline. So that's basically building out habitat that might have been there once to provide a layer of support to that infrastructure asset that's behind that habitat. And these efforts also are going to improve water quality in the White Oak River. So often we see with these living shorelines being a type of nature-based solution, it creates improvements for not just for the human side of things and our assets, but also for the critters that live in these habitats and for water quality as well. Heat health, emergency preparedness. We have an effort in Bladen, Robeson, and Scotland counties that has been supported by the state DHHS to look at those who are most vulnerable to heat illness. Those are outdoor workers, agriculture workers, senior citizens, people who live in mobile homes or otherwise might not have efficient cooling systems, and figure out from the standpoint of those populations, how can heat health alerts reach them? So not sort of just thinking about our traditional model of sending out alerts and sending out message blasts, but really thinking through the pathway through which that message actually will get to some of those populations which can be harder to reach. And community resilience planning, this is one that's close to my heart. We have a North Carolina Resilient Communities program. It's working both in DEQ and in my office in NCORE. We work together to provide support for communities that want to holistically look at their climate vulnerabilities and develop a resilience plan that identifies the pathways forward and the implementation opportunities to become more resilient. So I know I'm running low on time. I'm not going to spend too much more time, but I welcome you to reach out, let us know what other snippets we could be sharing in this story about climate change resilience in North Carolina. And I'll just do a very quick recap. Point number one, there's a lot at stake in North Carolina. So hold on to that, your consideration of that place that you care about and thinking about the climate impacts to it and how it becomes more resilient, because we always want to start with the why. Why are we doing this work? Point number two, make today's decisions in consideration of their generational impact. That's the decisions that we make today about how well we prepare ourselves and to adapt to a changing climate will affect the lives that the future generations live. And three, learn from our mistakes. That's that swinging door model, and build many layers of resilience. And that's that Swiss cheese model. So thank you to DEQ for offering me the chance to share this presentation with you all, and thank you all for attending. We probably have a moment or two for comments or questions, and maybe I will close out my screen
Yep. So Dr. Martin, we didn't have any questions yet in the question box, but I did want to share with you that I believe I found the link to the resiliency plan on the DEQ
Okay, that's good.
website. So I put that in the chat box for everyone to use.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm still not seeing any questions. Did you have any comments? You know, a lot of our ESI members are businesses. Is there anything specific to businesses or organizations that they can think of?
Definitely. Oh my gosh, there are so many roles that the private sector is playing in North Carolina. Some of our larger businesses support our emergency management operations through our business emergency operations center. And so businesses often play an important role in long-term recovery in providing critical needed supplies or resources, everything from water to construction materials. But also business communities are sometimes leading the way in resilience efforts. We have chambers of commerce that are active in helping their businesses be prepared for, especially for floods. We see there's some pretty concrete steps that businesses can take in terms of making sure that their paperwork is properly stored in the cloud somewhere, but also any paper copies are stored high off the ground, elevating utilities off the ground, ensuring that insurance policies are up to date and really understanding what those insurance policies are. We have a fantastic network of small business advisors in the state provided through a number of different partnerships and entities that have been doing this work with businesses, and we welcome, and many utilities are far along in this conversation as well, as it's really become front and center for them. So we welcome, encourage a role for the private sector. You all have expertise and perspectives that us in government, we will not be able to replicate on our own. So we definitely need your involvement in this work, and I'd encourage you to reach out either locally or to your state partners if you're interested in learning more.
Okay, perfect. And I still don't see any questions. And we're right at about 11 o'clock. So we are going to have a 15-minute break. We're going to get back at 11:15 to hear from the DEQ Secretary. Thank you again, Dr. Martin. And everyone enjoy a short break, and we'll see you in just a little bit. Hi, Bridget. I see you jumped on, but I don't know if you've got audio. I'm not seeing anything in that box on GoToWebinar. Oh, there it is. I see you're muted. Okay. Oh, hi, Bridget. I don't hear you, but your camera came on and then it went away. You're back. Hello. Good morning. I see you're unmuted, although I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, wonderful.
Success, ladies.
So I'm not sure why it's appearing under my name, but my name, that's the
Yeah.
secretary. Okay.
So if you want to just left click on your name, you can change that. You should have a little box that pops open.
Left click on my name. Yeah. What just happened? How do I get rid of this? Okay. Left click. Oh, okay, I gotcha. Edit. All right. All right, so we're good to go.
Perfect. All right.
I'm gonna go back to muting and off camera until again.
11:15.
All right, thanks.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, Secretary Advisor.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How you
Good.
doing?
I'm good. Happy Monday.
It is a happy Monday, isn't it?
Always.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, I hope you had a good weekend.
I did. Are we broadcast out right now, or is this just you and
I
I?
don't think so. I think it's just you and I.
Sounds good. We had a good one. It was.
You are,
Ladies,
hey, you are broadcasting.
you are broadcasting.
Oh,
We could talk about our weekend with everybody. That sounds good.
that's right. That's right.
It's all good.
We can't see y'all, so we could only see ourselves.
We turned our cameras off because it's all on y'all.
Okay.
Right. So
I thought y'all had the ability to lock the room. Glad I didn't say anything out of the way.
Yep. So we got about 2 minutes before we officially restart.
Sounds good.
I have to, the problem I have is my laptop screen is so small. So then I can't, when I move my verbiage in front of y'all's face, I can't see y'all. This is what happens when your eyes get old.
Yeah, you wear these things.
Well, I have that too, but I only need that for close up.
I need that for my computer screen.
Yeah. So Marcia, you just tell me when it's time for me to go.
Sure. We're almost there.
Okay.
It's like watching paint dry.
Watching the clock.
Yep. Just to make sure that everyone, we don't start too early for anyone that wants to hear from the secretary. Okay, I have 11:15, Jamie.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining us now. And it is my pleasure to introduce Secretary Elizabeth Beiser. Governor Roy Cooper named Elizabeth S. Beiser as Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality in June 2021, and she is the first woman confirmed to serve as DEQ Secretary. She has experience representing public, private, and nonprofit organizations on a wide variety of issues. She returns as Secretary to a department she knows well, since she previously served as Director of Legislative and Intergovernmental Affairs back when the agency was known as the North Carolina Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Welcome, Secretary Beiser.
Thank you, Jamie, and good morning. It is so good to be here with you all this morning. The ESI program is a program that I hold in very high regard. I was initially involved with ESI more than a decade ago in my previous time with the department. And I'm so glad to see that the program is just stronger than ever. I've had the pleasure of working with many of you or your companies over the years, and I'm really happy to be back at the department. For those of you who don't know me, I grew up in Columbus and Johnson counties, down the road from where Jamie grew up. I learned at an early age about the importance of public service from my dad, who was a county manager. And after working at the department a decade ago, I joined the private sector and represented a wide variety of stakeholders, which gave me a better understanding of the many constituencies of this agency. So again, I'm so happy to be back. I'm passionate about our mission, which is providing science-based environmental stewardship for the health and prosperity of all North Carolinians. As I am getting into my time here, you're going to hear me talk a lot about how a healthy environment and a healthy economy, they go hand in hand, they support each other. And I believe that finding common sense solutions and bringing everyone around the table is so important to work through those tough issues. And these aren't just talking points for me. They're a core part of who I am and the type of leadership that I'm bringing to the department. And what I love about ESI is that it embodies both of those concepts. This program shows that we can take a non-regulatory approach to working together to make our environment and our economy healthier. And the partnerships in ESI pay off for you and for the people of North Carolina. I love this fact that in the past 15 years, our ESI members have saved over $95 million and have had similarly impressive environmental results. In fact, our partners have saved enough CO2 in the past 10 years to offset the CO2 from a year's worth of energy powering 3.8 million homes. think about the collective impact that you all have had. And I know that in this setting, I am preaching to the choir, but you should know that I literally take every opportunity I have to promote this program. I even had a chance to talk to a U.S. Senate committee about it a couple of weeks ago. I truly appreciate the commitments that you have made to go above and beyond the regulatory minimums and your leadership on environmental management. Many of you have set ambitious goals, and you've allowed DEQ to provide the technical support to help make those goals a reality. And you're in such good company. We have 95 ESI members, including 7 new partners this year that cover nearly 200 sites in North Carolina. And I would ask that you help us encourage other facilities to join us in this endeavor. One of the things I'm focused on as secretary is modernizing the department. And so as part of that effort, we're looking at where our external environment has shifted in a way that changes how we need to think about our work. So I'm going to talk about a few different things that relate to this. First of all is emerging compounds and Pfas. And this is a key challenge for the department and for the state. You know, emerging compounds represent a fundamental shift in the way we do business. It's not a one-time issue, it's an evolving one. And it's one that's going to require creative problem solving and innovative thinking and decisive actions. Federal regulations have not kept up with the situation to date. And we have to address this challenge with a comprehensive policy approach. And we have to make sure that each of our actions, both short-term and long-term, are working together as part of a larger strategy that's protective of our residents, their health, and our natural resources. We're also taking steps to modernize our permitting processes. The past year and a half has shown us that we can operate in a digital environment and we can bring state government into the 21st century. You may have heard my predecessor say, if you can track a pizza, you should be able to track a permit. I love that saying, and we are working hard to make that a reality through our permitting transformation project. Fingers crossed, if the General Assembly funds our request, we will be able to do that within 5 years. Without their help, it'll be 2045. So we really need their help. But this is bigger than an online permit portal. We have to modernize all of our processes to ensure that we're using the time and resources that we have efficiently while making it easier for our stakeholders to interact with the department. I'll conclude by just reiterating that we can't regulate our way out of every problem facing North Carolina. The challenges that we're facing are great, but so are the opportunities. We need the public sector and the private sector working together, just like we do through ESI, to find those common sense solutions and forge that path forward. I want to thank you for doing your part in that effort through your participation in the Environmental Stewardship Initiative. We are here to support your sustainability and compliance goals, and we want this program to work for you. So thank you so much. It's great to be with you today. I'm looking forward to the day we can be back in person, but good to be with you virtually. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Secretary Beiser. And I believe they were going to give an opportunity if there was any questions.
There are not currently any questions in the box, but if any pop in, we'll let you know.
Okay, great. Thank you, Secretary Beiser. But before you go, we wanted to take a few minutes to recognize some of our newest members. So we're going to start with our new members at the partner level. These organizations have joined the program since last year's virtual conference in September 2020. As partners, they agree to set environmental goals and report on their progress annually. We look forward to assisting each of you in reaching these goals. So I'm going to run through the list now. So we have Best Diamond Packaging and LLC, which is located in Kinston, CommScope Incorporated in Catawba, CommScope Incorporated in Claremont, Cree LED in Durham, Jackson County Green Energy Park in Sylvia, Just Salad and Cattell Street brands. There's 3 different sites, Chapel Hill, Raleigh, and Charlotte. Then we have Novartis Gene Therapies in Durham, Reich LLC in Arden, Revlon in Oxford, Riverbend Malt House in Asheville, TC Transcontinental Thomasville. So a big welcome to all of our new partners. This spring, we welcomed our newest steward, Ajinomoto Health and Nutrition North America, Inc. in Raleigh. They joined the program in 2015 and became a rising steward in 2016. You'll be hearing from Ajinomoto staff this afternoon on the initiatives they've implemented to produce pharmaceutical-grade amino acids, and we look forward to presenting their plaque in person soon. We also had 2 sites successfully complete the renewal verification process for continuation of membership at our highest membership levels. The first is a 5-year renewal for Stanley Black & Decker's Kannapolis Distribution Center at the steward level. This site, which provides warehousing and distribution, has shown that they continue to meet the steward criteria of having aggressive environmental goals, a mature environmental management system that is integrated into their core business functions, involvement with their local community with a focus on environmental education and achievement, and a demonstration of going beyond compliance requirements. Finally, we want to congratulate the GKN Center Metals site in Conover for achieving 10 years at the Rising Steward level. This is the second review of this site that manufactures aluminum powdered metal components, demonstrating their mature environmental management system, measurable environmental goals, and verification of their commitment to go beyond compliance. So I want to say congratulations to all our ESI members on their achievements. So before I go, can I ask a question?
Yes, we did have one question pop in while you were talking. So the question is, where are state funding efforts in the legislature?
That's a great question. As you know, it's October and our fiscal year started July 1, but a lot of work has been going on behind the scenes. We are hopeful that we'll see a budget in the next couple of weeks. The legislative leaders have agreed tentatively within themselves. They're now negotiating with the governor. And so I'll just tell you all, fingers crossed, that we'll get a good budget coming out of this. It'll be the first time in a few years. If this is successful, that we'll have a state budget. But funding, like the funding that we're anticipating for the permit transformation project, it's just one of the many reasons that it'd be great to have a good solution there. So we are holding our breath and hoping it will be soon.
That was the only one we had.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you again, Secretary Beiser, for joining us, and thank you for the questions. So that is it for our morning session. We will be back at 1:30 for today's afternoon session. Don't forget to use the same link to log in, and after you exit each session, you'll be directed to a survey. Your responses help us improve the content that we provide. Each survey will relate to the sessions just ending, but feel free to let us know of anything regarding the conference as a whole, and we will continue to improve. Thanks, and we will see you at 1:30. We appreciate it.